Hello and welcome to the Birchal Podcast. I'm your host, Emily McFarlane, and today I have Clem Newton-Brown, who is the CEO and founder of Skyportz, which is a company pioneering the infrastructure for advanced aero mobility. Welcome, Clem.
Thanks, Em.
Thank you so much for coming in. So I know that as a founder and CEO of Skyportz, this is a company that is really close to your heart in the terms of you used to do a lot around property and planning in your previous role. Can you talk us a little bit through that and why you've come to find Skyportz now?
Yeah, sure. Look, I've got a pretty eclectic background in terms of my employment. I was previously a barrister specialising in town planning, and then I was a politician both at local government level and state government level, and then also working in the planning field and tourism as well. So I sort of used to enjoy doing things that were difficult and that needed political support and needed you to get the blocks in place to do something new. So, for example, Ponyfish Island, I started that. It wasn't called Ponyfish Island when I started it, but I ended up selling it to the guys who took it to the next level. But that was a really difficult planning issue where there's a bridge and I wanted to get approval to put a cafe on there. So
yeah, right.
So things like that, and as a planning consultant, I was sought out by people for unusual things. So and I got into this actually through microflight helicopters engaging me to get some certainty for their helipad on the river in Melbourne.
Okay.
And so that was sort of the start of it. And when we were trying to negotiate a better outcome there, which was not going very well, Uber Air turned up to Melbourne and government rolled out the red carpet for them. So here they are. Here's a business that employs 40 people. They've got 25 helicopters, and we couldn't get meetings, but government's meeting with these people to talk about flying saucers. So I thought, well, let me look into this, and that's what I did. So we ended up. Skyportz was really set up as a Trojan horse to get a seat at the table, because we figured that if Uber was going to come to Uber Air was going to come to Melbourne, they're going to want this site in the centre of the city. It's the only central city helipad in Australia.
Right,
so,
really?
Yeah, so that was what we did. So Skyportz was really set up so that we could get a seat at the table, which worked. So got invited to the announcement in Washington in 2019, with government minister and all staff and everything there, and they announced Melbourne as the third test city after Dallas and LA. So very exciting, and I thought back then, wow, I have really just landed on my feet here. This is incredible, and thinking that things were really going to take off in a big way. But
are these puns intentional? The landing, the taking off?
Possibly. Anyway, Uber Air basically didn't have any resources to put into Melbourne.
Okay.
And they actually folded after a year or so. So to their credit, they got the ball rolling with, that's not an aviation saying. They got the ball rolling with getting all the industry together, and then they got they advanced it so that they were thought leaders in this. But ultimately, they were not the right people to be actually doing the industry, because it's an aviation industry, and they basically run an app. So, so they brought all together. They could see that there was a lot of clever people and a lot of money going to the aircraft being built, and they sort of brought the whole ecosystem together. So credit to them for doing that. But they got subsumed by one of the leading air taxis, Joby, and so there's a lot of the people who used to work at Uber or with Joby or with Archer and other places. So they're still around, and but from there it's been a much slower progress. So I think everybody sort of drank the Uber Air Kool-Aid and said, this is amazing. It's all going to happen in a very short time frame. And the reality is, it is going to happen, but it's not going to happen in a short time frame. So the basis of Skyportz is really about providing the infrastructure for these new aircraft. So what's happened is there's about 1,000 aircraft in development, and there's about probably a dozen that are close to, they've got flying aircraft and they're close to certification. There's probably 2, Joby and Archer, which are the front runners, who are likely to start operations in Dubai in the next year or two.
Huge.
So it's all happening, and so the problem is, though, that all these aircraft have put together their pitch decks about we're going to be able to provide aviation on demand, just like calling an Uber, you'll get in an air taxi. And the thing is, these aircraft will be able to do that, but only if they've got places to land.
Right.
So that's where Skyportz is about. We're more of we're a property business, really. And so we're trying to create the the network of sites to make the aircraft useful.
Okay. So whereas the difference, obviously, if you give Uber a call, you get on the app, you order it to your house, you obviously would need to go to the helipad or the Skyportz.
Vertiport, yep.
The vertiport to get your
Yes.
get your air taxi. Do you think that that's going to cause any issues in terms of a backlog, people trying to land planes at the same time? How would that work?
Oh, yeah, look, the industry is huge. And look, I'm focusing on really a very small part of it, which is getting the property industry excited, getting options on sites. And then when it comes to actually building and operating them, there's a whole lot of partners we're going to need to bring in. And,
okay.
and one big aspect of that, as you've just mentioned, is the air traffic management. So there's it's a bit like the days of you're probably too young to know this, but Beta and VHS were the two video formats.
I do remember.
You do remember that, yeah. So if you bought a Beta video,
just drink a lot of water.
Well, if you bought a Beta video, you ended up just with an expensive electronic clock that couldn't do anything else. So VHS won. So and there's similar things happening here. Everybody's trying to be the standard. So whether it's battery charging, air traffic management, or the aircraft themselves, there's a bit of a tussle going on out there in all aspects. So we'll end up partnering with, hopefully not choosing the Beta, but choosing the VHS version of the systems. And that's why I don't think we need to be going too far down the path of actually saying that here is our air traffic management system, because we haven't even got the aircraft yet. So it's very much a business which is not it's not capital intensive. We're not actually building anything, and this is why we can, with a small amount of money through virtual raises, we can be very effective. And at the moment we've got 500 investors. We've got another couple of hundred that have come in the last 3 days.
Amazing.
And I think we'll probably, by the end of this raise, we might have 1,000 investors. And these are people who understand that this isn't about, we don't have a product. We're not like a lot of other businesses where we're selling sunscreen or gin or whatever it might be, and we want to expand our production. And here's what we're selling, and we're going to sell this much more next week. This is a bit of a moonshot. I mean, there is no income, and there won't be for a long time. And we're basically trying to set the scene such that we can attract a really big investment when it comes to actually building a network, and that's not going to be a virtual raise, unfortunately. That's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars when it comes to actually building a network. Okay.
So when you say it's going to be a long time coming, are there any indicators that it will be taking off soon with the government? Obviously, it's helpful that you've got this incredible background in politics, so you've got a lot of contacts within that area. Do you have an inkling of when this kind of industry will start to take off?
Yeah, look, we'll see it first in 100 days when the Paris Olympics starts. The volocopter will be flying there.
Huge.
And that'll be demonstration flights. That won't be a full service, I don't think. But Joby and Archer in Dubai, they're already building their vertiports there now. And quite encouragingly this week, one of our competitors or colleagues, another vertiport company based in the UK, has just had an investment of 110 million US dollars, so 170 million Australian dollars to build those vertiports in Dubai. So that's sort of where we're sort of planning to be at the spot where when the investment is ready to be made, we've put enough pieces of the puzzle on the table that we're an essential part of that conversation. And so, for example, we've attracted a number of sort of the venture capitalists and bigger infrastructure investors, and they're interested. They can see this is there's going to be a highways of the sky to be owned if you own the landing sites, but it's too soon though. So they're ready to invest when I can show that there's a path to making money, but we can't do that at the moment without the aircraft.
Yeah, so it's like the chicken versus the egg, right?
Yes.
So the aircrafts have to be created, then you've got to think of this air traffic control, and then obviously the vertiports, and they all come into this ecosystem together. So where do you think the missing piece of the puzzle is, and what is going to come first to make this industry viable in Australia?
The first things will be simply helicopters being replaced with electric helicopters. So it's not such a big stretch that you can get in a microflight helicopter today and fly to a winery for lunch, and it'll cost you $500 or whatever it is, and they'll replace that aircraft with a really nice new electric quiet aircraft. And so there's no reason that can't happen as soon as the aircraft are certified to fly. So that will happen quite quickly. And so I didn't actually answer the question, your last one, about what are the signals that this is going to be actually happening. And the aircraft coming is a big one. And when I started this, it was still a bit uncertain as to whether these type of aircraft would actually get approved. But we've got some of the biggest aviation companies in the world who are working on this. Boeing, Bell, Embraer, Airbus. They're all working on prototypes. But funnily enough, it's the tech ones that have Joby and Archer are not from an aviation background, and they're further ahead than anybody else. So that's interesting. But the aircraft, it's clear now that they are coming. But the question is, are they going to be useful and be able to be used in the way that they've pitched them to be used? And that's the unknown. In terms of being able to fly them as they want to fly them, that's very much depends on policy support. Now, getting policy changed, even when I was on the inside, it's hugely difficult to get new policy up, and from the outside, it's almost impossible. I mean, you can turn up to as many sort of meetings you want and lobby and everything else, but if there's not a mood for change on the inside, then it's very difficult. And so a lot of what I've been doing in the last 5 years is being leading working groups, being on working groups at a state, national and international level, and pushing the conversation into this is what we need for it to happen. So, and it's not just me. I mean, there's lots and lots of people doing this, and so we're at the point now where CASA have released guidelines for vertiports. So that's massive. What we need now is state governments to pick up those guidelines and say, well, we like this, and we're happy for vertiports to be put in places where a heliport wouldn't be acceptable. So the idea is to bring them into closer to where people, to more sensitive areas where people actually want to go.
Okay.
So CASA's behind it. They're basically redesigning the skies for not just electric air taxis, but autonomous. So having no pilot in them. So this is all being done already, and that's going to take a bit more time, but that's already underway. So those two things. The policy support and the physical capability of the aircraft that are there means that all we're really left with, the missing piece of the puzzle, is the landing sites. And so it is still a speculative business, and there'll be a lot of twists and turns along the way. And part of what we've done recently is set up a fully owned subsidiary called Wilbur Air, which after Wilbur Wright, and it's going to be an electric airline that can operate from our vertiports. So
brilliant.
So what we're doing is collecting together options on aircraft, because it's going to be hard to get hold of these aircraft once they start being useful. Everybody's going to want them. So we want to be in the position where we can order the aircraft in, and we've got 2 orders. We actually just announced one today called Fly Now, which is going to be for both freight and for people, a very small aircraft, so awesome. 1 or 2 people. And so we've got the first 100 of those to come into Australia, and also the first 100 of the Electra Aero, which is a short takeoff on landing aircraft that's got a very long range. So we're sort of going to be collecting these options so that we're just as more pieces of that puzzle. And so we want to be in the position where when somebody is ready to actually invest in doing what we say, what we want, this plan that we've put together, that it's easy for them to do so.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I think it's a really exciting prospect, and I'm sure you would remember watching the Jetsons and watching them fly around in the little aeroplanes. Like, this is what I picture when I picture that. Is that something that you envision in the future, that you'll look up into the sky and you'll see these little air taxis flying around? And what's the capacity for how many there could be at any given time?
Yeah, look, I mean, as far as the capacity goes, I mean, the sky's a very big place, and there's no obstacles other than other aircraft. So it's actually easier to do autonomy in the sky than it is on the road. So the news today was they had some autonomous truck trials in Victoria that were cancelled, and hugely difficult to have autonomous vehicles when you're trying to retrofit into a busy environment where you've got, street signs that need to be obeyed, you've got kids that might run out, you've got all sorts of things that need to be considered. Whereas in the air, as long as you can land and take off safely, once you're in the air, all you've got to worry about is other aircraft. And if all the aircraft are on the same system, they won't be able to crash into each other. I mean, even drones today, if you buy a half-decent drone from JB Hi-Fi, it's almost impossible to fly it into a wall because it will sense that and stop. So,
great.
So safety is going to be a really big issue. And I mean, to get into an autonomous aircraft, obviously you have to be feel pretty comfortable with it from a safety perspective.
Would you get into an autonomous aircraft?
Oh, eventually, yeah. Look, I think initially they'll start flying as freight services. So obviously, that's a lot less of an impact if there's an issue. But this industry has to be super safe. I mean, and look, aviation is the safest way to get around. In fact, safest form of transport in the world, and so. Small aircraft and helicopters are not that safe. So the idea with these aircraft is to make them as safe as getting on a plane to Sydney. And when you get on a plane there, not many people would think, well, I wonder if I'm going to get there or not. Whereas if you get into a helicopter, you get that feeling in your stomach going, oh, this is fun, but there's a few single points of failure here. So these aircraft are going to be much safer. For the mathematical nerds out there, 10 to the minus 9 is the equation they're working towards. Now, don't ask me anything further than that because that's those who know, and but it's very safe. It's the same standard to commercial airliners.
Okay, that's pretty brilliant. So in terms of where you are now, how did you start Skyportz? Obviously, you've had a career where you were a Deputy Lord Mayor of Melbourne. You've been in politics for such a long period of time. Where was the transition?
Well, I suppose the transition was coming out of politics, which was unexpected and unwanted. I lost the seat actually in Paran where we are now. So I won it on my second go and served for one term and then lost the seat at the next election. So previously I'd been a barrister and I had the choice then I suppose of going back to being a barrister or doing setting up a consultancy. And I suppose because I'd had sort of quite an eclectic background both in politics and law and also in I had a few small businesses on the river, a cafe, barbecue boats, a water taxi, and some tourism businesses in Tasmania. So
you've lived a few lives, Clem.
Yeah. So I sort of thought, well, I'd rather set up a consultancy where I can still go to VCAT and appear for people as an advocate, but not be appearing as a barrister. And that would also leave me open to be a bit more creative in exploring other things. So that's I suppose what I did. And when I probably had half a dozen clients on retainer, and one of them was microflight helicopters. Okay. And it was through that retainer that I was exposed to Uber Air and set up Skyportz really to help my client. And then after that, I thought, I might as well keep going. So for the first few years, I kept doing other work, but for the last probably 4 years or so, I've been full-time on this. Okay.
So to grow this business, obviously you've come through Birchal and done crowdsource funding as a form of funding. Why did you choose to do a community-based round of fundraising versus, say, a VC or a bank loan?
Well, I suppose this is a business that's waiting for a product. So it is very difficult to satisfy a traditional venture capitalist at this stage. They're starting to circle now, but when I started, it was very much a germ of an idea that I could see there was a potential, but couldn't actually articulate it that well. It's a whole lot easier now to sort of see over the horizon, but it is still a bit early though. I mean, people who invest are going to want to have, in terms of a venture capital or a big infrastructure fund, they've got quite short time frames. And so basically, I mean, one of the big funds said they're happy to invest in building a network in the many hundreds of millions of dollars, but they want to see the return and how that's going to be met if they invest that. So we can't show that at the moment because of the we haven't got the aircraft yet. So it is a bit early, and investments through Birchal are people who can see the vision that we can see, and want to be along for the ride, and they're not necessarily they're happy to take a punt that this is going to be a lot bigger than investing in something which is a product it's got an expected rate of return in dividends every year. So that's why it's quite good in that there'll probably end up being 1,000 people who have believe that things are going to pan out as I say they're going to do. And look, it is a risk though. Look, I wouldn't recommend anybody investing who obviously you invest a small amount of money. It's going to be tied up for a while. We're hopefully looking for that exit opportunity, which could be either a big company coming in and taking over the work we've done, or potentially partnering. In which case, you could end up owning shares in another bigger entity. And as I said, look, that's exactly what's happened in Dubai this week. And when or whether it happens in Australia, I think it's inevitable that this industry is going to happen. And I think we're in a position where, if not essential, we're going to be very, very useful to anybody who wants to come in and make that investment. So, but it is still very nebulous. And as I said, look, please don't invest your life savings in this, because this is something where there'll be a lot of twists and turns, and I hope it's going to be huge. But obviously, we can't be claiming that. Yeah,
absolutely. And do you have any competitors in the marketplace at the moment?
Not in Australia. So in around the world, there's when I first started this, there was probably 2 or 3 companies around the world that had similarly identified this opportunity. In the last year, there's probably there must be a dozen or 2 dozen companies now doing similar stuff. So nobody's got any sort of focus on Australia, and I think that's probably a couple of reasons. First of all, we're not a launch market, so the aircraft are all talking about launching elsewhere, and that's one of the challenges I've got, which is why I set up Wilbur Air, was to try to actually get an early launch in Australia. But because we're a long way away, and because I've been banging on about this for longer than anybody else, I probably others have thought, Skyportz has got that covered in Australia. We'll just leave that market. So it's quite a good position to be in when I can see what's happening around the world. That we're in a fairly strong position in Australia. It doesn't mean that competitors can't come in, and this is why we are interested in that big partnership earlier on, so that we can sort of cement in that the lead that we've got.
Okay, and in terms of defensibility of product, what do you have at Skyportz that would be difficult to replicate for another player in the market?
Yeah, the main thing is not so much the product. I mean, we are developing products. We've got a fantastic architect, Rafael Contreras, who used to work with Zaha Hadid and design the Beijing airport. And so he's done some amazing designs. But ultimately, the value is not so much in the designs, which we are sort of working on developing low-cost designs for people to sort of create small vertistops on sites. But that's really about servicing the property industry. So the point of difference we've got that's hard to replicate is that we've got hundreds and hundreds of property sites. So partners that have signed up to us, we've got first option to activate their sites for aviation. And if you go onto our website, there's a locator map that has pins on the map. You can pinch it in and out, and you can see where they all are. And so we're in the position now, if that big investor comes along and says, okay, let's do Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, we want to choose 6 vertiports in each city or around each city. We're in a position where we've got hundreds of potential sites, and we can work out then, okay, where is the best spot for it? And we've got the property owner who we know is keen. We know how to contact them. They're registered with us. And then we go to the next step of doing the serious assessment, and then there'd be proper contracts that would be negotiated for each individual site. So that sort of work is very, it's taken a long time to get that together. It's fairly automated now, so every day I'll get new people putting their properties in, and it's quite a good deal for them. And I don't. Initially, I started, part of my business model was to charge property owners to represent them, and that was going to keep the cash going.
Okay.
I found that it was just too early for people to commit to proper, rock solid options on sites. So the options that we've got are the first right to negotiate for an aviation purpose, and that's no skin off their nose because no one's knocking on their door to put a heliport on their factory and wherever it is. So it's quite easy to get that option. And so we do all the work. We don't charge them for representing them, and they know that when the time's right, we could come back knocking on the door and saying, look, we're ready to build here. Can we negotiate to build a vertiport here? So yeah, that's probably our biggest advantage. The other one is that the team we've got is put together everything from architects, engineers, aviation consultants, micromobility experts, town planners. So we've sort of got a team together that when the paying gigs come in, I can bring them all together and we could design and build a vertiport today, but at the moment it's too soon. So I think we're going to get to the point though where property developers future-proof their site. So if they're developing something or developing a new suburb, they'll make allowance for the train station, but they'll also make allowance for the vertiport. And that's where I think we'll see perhaps some investment early on in advance of the aircraft. Wouldn't make any sense to retrofit anything now, but to future-proof I think is important.
Yeah, it's a really exciting prospect. I think something that you failed to mention in your key point of difference is your background and how that's prepared you to run a company like this. What would you say your key learnings are that you would take from your previous career that you can bring to this? Obviously, you've got the contacts, but what else could you bring?
Get back up when you get knocked down, that sort of thing. I've run in plenty of elections that I haven't won in my political career. So yeah, look, being persistent, I suppose, is a good trait in this industry, and also being able to respond to changing circumstances and find other areas where you can add value, because this is an organic industry that doesn't exist yet. It's slowly sort of forming like an amoeba, and you're sort of trying to find where can I add value, and that's where Wilbur Air came out of that, and that was through a discussion with a big investment fund that said, well, that comment about when we can get a return, then we'll be interested. And I thought, well, if I actually have an airline that's ready to operate, then that's another key piece of that puzzle that they will need to make that big investment. Aviation is not one of my backgrounds, so I'm certainly not going to be trying to become an airline operator. That will be in partnership with others. So again, with Wilbur Air, which is wholly owned by Skyportz, so anyone who invests in Skyportz will also own a future airline. We'll be open with that to partnering with any airline that wants to fly under our brand. And there's already airlines out there. I mean, Sydney Seaplanes is they're already an advanced air mobility operator in that they fly seaplanes and amphibious planes, and they've got a business called Dovetail, which is electrifying those aircraft. So companies like that and existing helicopter companies like Microflight, HeliSpirit and others, they're natural operators for these new aircraft. And so that's sort of probably the next step along is once I've got the aircraft available, when I know that they're coming, is to get those operators together so that we can present the whole package.
Awesome. So you've already got a significant amount of shareholders on board from previous crowdfunding raises. You're doing another raise currently. What does bringing the crowd along for the ride mean to you?
Look, it's great, a great affirmation that this admittedly audacious idea that I'm going to light the spark that creates a whole new revolution in the way we move people and goods. I mean, it's a pretty sort of big picture plan. I'm not the only person doing it by any means, but the vertiport space is a space where I am the only person doing it in Australia, and to have so many people listen to what the plan is, and audacious as it may be, say, well, I'm prepared to put some money in it. It might only be $250 or it might be $20,000, but whatever the amount is, people are putting their money in. And so I suppose it's affirming to have that. There's not just one or two people who think, oh, you're okay. It's there's others who think, well, this is a plan that we believe in as well. So, as I said, it is still risky. There's nothing certain about this, but I think we're sort of we are on the right path, and having these extra funds come in means that me and a few consultants can keep working to create further pieces of the puzzle. So this fundraiser isn't about building vertiports. I mean, that's a really big money stake. So this is continuing to do the desktop work and the background work that we're doing to assemble the ecosystem.
Yeah, right. So in the future, I've seen that there's some great rewards on offer for your investors. So they've got the opportunity to, fly in these aircrafts and be the first to do it. Is that what you think is attracting a lot of investors, is the excitement?
Look, I'm not sure how many people will take up the opportunity to be first, but look, potentially, yeah. Look, there are some rewards there, and look, investors we keep update them regularly on what we're doing, these crowd fundraisers with Birchal are ASIC regulated, and it's been a couple of months putting together the documents required, and it's an ongoing regulatory regime you have to comply with. So that's good, because there's a lot of people who may not have invested before, and while it's a risky investment in terms of will the business fail or not, it's not risky, or not so risky in terms of people, your money being looked after appropriately, because we've got all these checks and controls that ASIC put on us. And now, what was the question? I've gone off on a tangent now.
No, people who have invested being able to be among the first few to actually try.
Yes. So in the rewards, look, the top reward is above $10,000, and that will give you the first rights to fly before our operations start commercially. Look, that could be some way down the path, but yeah, look, I think it's not so much about the rewards, because at the moment there is no business, there's no vertiport I can show you, there's no cocktail party on a vertiport I can invite you to launch the thing, but this is it's an industry that where we're just putting these pieces together and slowly assembling them, and getting collaboration agreements, memorandums of understanding and options, and so we're collecting together basically this big deal room in a Dropbox, which keeps getting added to. The last one being the one that was added today, which was the Fly Now agreement. We're trying to add value where we can, but doing it in a way that's sustainable for the long term, because this is a long game, so we can't afford to be spending a lot of money and running out of cash. This is something where we need to be able to do this sustainably for the long term. And this is why we don't have any employees. So one of the discussions I had with somebody was, well, you don't even have any employees. What's all this for? And so the reality is we use consultancies so that we can expand and contract as required. So we've got a project this site is worth doing an analysis on, then we'll get a consultant in and maybe spend a bit of money on that. But otherwise, we're conserving our capital, and we're not in a position where we could get to Monday morning and say, well, okay, we can't actually pay anybody this week, so we're closing down. And that's a very real risk for a lot of these businesses, is that if you've got wages, you can't actually shut things down to be on a slow burn. You have to pay them. Whereas we're in this position where we've got a virtually unlimited runway. I mean, I'm so invested in this now, and I still own 90% of the company. So I'm not walking away from it, and I'll keep doing what I'm doing. But it's great that there seems to be a pool of people that want to back me, and the team of people that I sort of bring in and out to help. And so, it'd be great to have a good raise this round, so that we can continue to do that for the next few years. And after that, I think things will be a lot clearer then. And look, each raise, I think, becomes easier as it becomes more and more certain.
Definitely. And in terms of the Advanced Air Mobility Scheme, I know that you've spoken a lot about regional connectivity. Why is that so important?
Yeah, look, it's interesting. Look, the imagery out there is all about sort of these Jetsons sort of jumping around on city rooftops and things. And I'm a bit different to a lot of this industry where I don't think that that's actually that useful. In Australia, we're not congested enough for it to be of any great utility to go from the city to the airport. You know, if you come out of a hotel in Melbourne or Sydney, and in Sydney you get the train, but it's just as quick to get in a car, into an Uber car or a taxi, than to find a vertiport, and you know, you might save, you know, you might if you're lucky save some time, but it's going to be hugely more expensive than just getting in a car. So I don't think that that's really a use case that's going to be very. It's not going to solve a problem really in Australia. It might in Mumbai, where you can sit in a taxi for 2 hours to go 10 kilometres, or LA, or if you're going to islands and over mountainous terrain and that sort of stuff, where you can make a difference. But so for Australia, I think the regional connectivity is an interesting one, because a lot of the policy support from government is around connecting regional and remote communities. So there's a lot of drone delivery trials and things that are going on at the moment. People trying to develop drones to service remote communities, the problem with this is that is quite a good use case, but a lot of the aircraft that are being developed are fully electric, and they have limitations from with battery life. So
right.
So that's one of the problems we've got, is that the fully electric aircraft, you're probably looking at a couple of 100 kilometres range, and that's why the partnership I've got with Electra Aero is a really good one, and I've had it for a long time. And they're a eSTOL, electric short takeoff and landing aircraft. So they take off in about 30 metres. So energy lifting something straight up uses a whole lot of energy. So if you can use a short runway, you save a lot of energy. And these aircraft, while they can't land on a small helipad, they can land on a very short runway, and remote runway, unmade runways as well, grass paddocks, that sort of thing. Okay. And importantly, they're electric, but they've also got an onboard charger. So so they've got 1,000 kilometre range, which is hugely useful for Australian purposes. And the other benefit of having the charger on board is that you don't need to provide charging infrastructure at each vertiport, because that's going to be another thing which will be very expensive, big capital investment to put electric charging at all these vertiports. So that's why the regional connectivity piece with that, particularly with that Electra Aero aircraft, I think is potentially going to be a very viable business case in the future.
Yeah, it's a really exciting space, and there's so many moving parts, I think, and it's really intricate in its detail and its technicalities. Do you find that it's been hard for you to remain agile and keep up with all of the trends and what's changing in the space?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's just huge. And look, you can't be across all of it. For example, which air traffic management system you use. Now, there's half a dozen people out there, of companies out there, and probably more who are trying to become the standard. And as a potential future vertiport operator, I get lobbied by them all the time. Do you want to use our system? Do you want to use our system? And I just don't have the bandwidth to even work out which one is better than the other one. And so I've sort of come to the conclusion that I actually don't need to make that decision now. I'm not building something now, and when I need to put in a system, that can happen at that time, and by that time it will be clear what is the standard that needs to be used and which is going to be the best for our services. So that's an example, and battery charging is another thing. I mean, that's hugely complex, very technical. There's a company called Electro Aero in South Australia that is developing aviation chargers, and so we're partnered with them, and I just rely on them. If somebody's property owner's got a question about what's the charging rate we need, how much do we need to upgrade our power and that sort of stuff, I'll refer it to them, and they'll be doing that side of things. So yeah, it is a huge industry, and look, I'm really focusing on probably the areas of my expertise, which is the political and regulatory changes required to activate these vertiports, and the property relationships with the owners to to have options on activating those sites. So it's a fairly lo-fi sort of area that we're working on, but it is going to be essential, and all those much cleverer people than me can come in to work out how to fly the aircraft safely.
Clem, I couldn't think of anyone better for the job to create a system of infrastructure for this, considering your background. And I think it's a really exciting industry to be in. And I feel like this was really educational for a lot of people who might not have heard about this space at all. It's really new, it's really exciting. And thank you so much for bringing us the story and bringing this campaign to Birchal. I think it's been an inspiration to a lot of business owners of what can be achieved.
Thanks, Em. Yeah, look, it's been a pretty hectic month or two getting it all together, and
it always is.
Yeah, and now I'm trying to get through speaking to as many people as possible. We had an expression of interest list of almost 1,000. So if you've expressed interest and I haven't called you yet, and you really want to speak to me, just give me a call. All my details are there, or send me an email. We'll have a Teams meeting. But I am keen to sort of chat with people who are on the fence and not. I don't want them to not invest because they're under a misapprehension about something. So yeah, look, very very open to chat, and great. Birchal's a fantastic platform for businesses like this, where you're trying to sort of basically create something out of nothing. Birchal's been a fantastic forum to bring people along who believe in what it is we're trying to put together.
No, I really appreciate it, Clem, and it's great to see startups like yours contributing to the landscape. So appreciate it. Thanks for chatting with us today.
Thank you.